What's going on, folks? Welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide. What in the world is going on in the state of Texas when it comes to trophy bass? Right now we're seeing more giant bass get caught than most of us have ever seen and will ever see in our entire lifetimes. And today I've got one of our area biologists, Mr. Jake Norman, is going to help me break down exactly what's been going on with that. Oh yeah, and we're going to discuss tracking Lake Fork bass throughout the spawn. Well, Jake, man, thank you so much, as always. Not the first time you've come on with us, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge. Jake Norman is our area biologist for Lake Fork and all the lakes in this little area right here.
This area total. Yep.
In northeast Texas. And, man, this has been kind of some, not completely unprecedented. Maybe you know better than I do. I know we had our run here at Lake Fork in the 90s of amazing big fish catches and other lakes as well at that time. I don't really know even where to start, other than people ask me all the time, why are we catching all these giant bass in the state of Texas? I think the easy thing everybody wants to point to is forward-facing sonar. But forward-facing sonar or not, 17 pounds, 16, 15, 50. Like, these are of all time top 50 catches in the state of Texas ever. Many of them. How many in the top 50 we put in this year?
4 over the top 50 this year alone, which we haven't broken top 50. Last year was the first one that touched the 50 in several years. We've got 4 over this year that are now 50. 4 of the 50 largest bass ever caught in the state.
Come in 2022. So, Jake, what is going on in the state of Texas right now?
There's a crazy boom going right now, and it's great for the state. I would say most of them are seeming. We've got a lot of them happen on the western side of the state. And really, a lot lot of that,
which is good. Y'all all go fish out west.
Yeah, let's take some.
Y'all go that way. We're gonna stay over here.
Yeah, we don't need all the pressure. That's for sure. But really, I mean, the same type of new lake effects that you hear people talk about, that everyone was, that mini drought we had here at Fork before, we kind of got a little bump afterwards. Those lakes out there cycle 20, 30, 40 feet at a time. When they get low, they get really bad. Yeah. The good part about that is, it doesn't take much of a rise then, when it's been dry for several years, to have tons of flooded habitat. And so you have survival of everything, crazy year classes, not to mention, when the lake comes up, our stocking priorities, they go over their priority one a lot of times. We stock heavy in those areas.
So when a lake's been down and we experience a rise in that lake and you've got an abundance of cover,
when the cover's there,
then y'all move the priority on stocking that particular body of water up the list.
They're going to get stocked a lot more frequently because while it's down, they're not getting stocked.
So it's kind of a waste of money.
Exactly. If you're stocking them on a bare rock bank, a hole in the ground essentially, you're not going to have a lot of good survival. So when the cover comes up, when the cover's there, we stock a lot more heavily. And if you look at our stocking records, we're about a decade or so ago, some of these lakes had some water, got stocked pretty heavily. Can't say that's the only reason, but without a doubt, I think we're seeing some good survival from those, and some of the those fish that were stocked a decade or so ago reach some of these giant sizes now.
For some of you guys that may not understand on the stocking process, when the lake is low, why do we not stock? Jake said it's just bare bank. Well, to elaborate on that just a little bit, what happens is you stock fry,
about 2 inches on average,
fingerling fry, bass fry like this into a lake. They are going to get predation bad. Like, they're going to get eaten by crappie, they're going to get eaten by white bass, they're going to get eaten by other bass. The fry need cover, shallow cover, to have a good survival rate. So that's why we say it's a waste of money for the state to spend their money stocking these ShareLunker genetics and Florida strain genetics into these lakes, when most of them are going to get eaten if you do that in a bare hole in the ground, as you put it. So that's why we don't stock them when they're low, and then when they're high, we do stock them.
Yeah, and people don't realize, honestly, even in a good year, how low survival is of these fish. I always tell people 0 to 5% of all the fish we stock. And
makes sense, because I know, like, I've seen studies where a 10-pound bass will lay 50,000 eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if 50,000 survived, or if 30,000 of those survived, our lakes would be overrun with stunted bass that couldn't grow.
So the survival's a lot lower. So when we have excellent habitat, you start getting closer to 5%.
Yeah.
When you have zero habitat, you're a lot closer to 0%.
So 0 point something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So really a lot of that has to do, I think, with the habitat. Not just, obviously every fish that's been caught has not been a direct product of our stocking, but the genetics that are there from it. So they might be a second generation, or the genetics are getting put in there and surviving when we have that good habitat and really bumping up the quality of those fish in that lake.
And beyond stocking, like we said, every 10-pound bass lays 50,000 eggs, give or take. Well, the natural fry recruitment, the natural fry survival rate from the natural spawn is better, not just for bass, but I think what's also important when a lake comes up, it is a big part of the new lake syndrome that people just don't talk about, is the bait survival rate.
Everything.
When the shad spawn, when the bluegill spawn, they survive better. And then we got more food. As those fish mature, you got more food for the bigger bass specifically, because the bigger bass can't live off of fry alone. He's going to need to eat it. 8, 9, 12-inch gizzard shad. He's going to need a hand-sized bluegill. He needs that kind of food. So those other species have to have good fry survival as well to grow these giant bass, regardless of genetics.
No, absolutely. And on top of that, even one step lower is the plankton bloom.
Plankton.
Yeah, when we get nutrients, we have all that flooded cover. That's releasing nutrients into the water right there as well. We get better plankton blooms. So the young of the year for your fry and your bluegill, even, they've got plenty of food.
Yes.
The whole food chain is just stimulated.
It all does start with plankton. This is a little off track of our topic of why Texas is so great right now, but it's something that I think is maybe the most massively misunderstood and overlooked aspect of bass fishing. Essentially, when we're going around, we all talk about looking for bait, find the bass. Well, find the plankton, find the bait.
Very much so.
In a big way. I mean, we as bass fishermen, without having any idea that we're doing it, are chasing plankton a lot of the time. Why does grass help a lake so much? Well, one of the reasons is you get more algae bloom, more plankton, things like. I mean, you know better than I do, but in my mind, I just see it as when you got a lot of grass in the lake, you got a healthier fishery because you do have more of that base source of plankton and microorganisms that helps the bait fish go.
Definitely.
There you go, guys. Chase plankton. You'll find bass.
And there's a new one.
Yeah, that's it. I know nobody talks about that, but like we talked about the shallow point deal on Lake Fork and wind-blown shallow points. Well, what happens when a ridge runs out into the water? All the plankton in the water column gets condensed over that ridge as it blows over it. That's why the shad show up, and that's why the bass show up. So we really are chasing plankton a lot of times. But okay, so we got stocking. How much is forward-facing sonar making this happen?
It without a question is in a pretty big way in some areas. If we look at how many fish at Ivy up until these last few that got caught just recently, most of those fish before then were being caught with forward-facing sonar in some way, shape, or form. So and that lake specifically, as you know, it's set up for folks who use forward-facing sonar.
A lot of those West Texas lakes are.
They are. I mean, the people I've had local riders around here ask me, well, why aren't they doing that at Fork? I'm like, well, they are some, but they can't go around Fork and just cover the entire dang lake.
Timber
and everything else. It's a whole different animal. So those lakes out there with forward-facing sonar are just a perfect storm.
A lot of times, I don't think people really understand how much time a guy like Josh Jones is spending on his trolling motor running through open water looking for a big one.
And he can't do that here, or lakes with timber, or even lakes that have that many different fingers.
He'll take a bath when you hit that stump.
Exactly. So it's a whole different animal out there. And so those fish, again, those fish didn't hatch. They're not a year old. Those fish have been there for a little while, of course.
For a fish to get to what we're seeing in Texas, not even just 13, yes, but 14, 15, 16, 17-pound fish that we've seen caught in Texas this year. How long does it take a fish to get 14 to 17 pounds? I mean, I know it depends on the habitat.
Sure.
But on average.
13 plus years is a good ballpark. I mean, we're 10. We've seen 13-pound fish be 10 years old.
Okay.
Conversely, 13, 15 years old is what you're probably going to see for those really big fish.
The 15-pounders or so.
And unfortunately, you'd never know unless
10-year minimum to get to the teenage class type of thing.
Minimum in a normal setting. Now, there's some crazy private lakes where people do some hand feeding essentially, and they're getting 8-pounders in 3 years and more or less. But
sure.
But on average, in a public system, 10 years on the low end, 13 plus without question on all of those fish.
So is there anything? I mean, how much? So we've talked about stocking, we've talked about forward-facing sonar. How much is the ShareLunker program contributing to this burst of giant bass that we're seeing?
No, that's a good question, and we haven't this year. I haven't seen the most recent slug of data come back. I know the first batch, the first 15 or so. I don't think we had any direct ShareLunker stockings at that point, but they're definitely seeing the lineage pop up in a few of these fish.
So the lineage, so it's not like, well, this was the son of ShareLunker number blah, 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 or this was the daughter of ShareLunker blah, blah, blah. But it's like, this is
granddaughter,
the great niece or the granddaughter. So the lineage is, so those genetics aren't affecting the fishery, whether it's directly the first generation or not.
Without
second, third generation, we are seeing the effects.
Yep.
And now we've been running the ShareLunker program since the mid-'80s.
Yes.
And been stocking heavily for sure since the 90s, I know. So we're looking at 30 years, and we're talking about minimum of 10 years to get there. We're looking at third and fourth generation, fifth generation of ShareLunker stockings. And I think that, to me, seems like if you had to put your finger on one thing that's different about Texas and everywhere else, because here's the deal, Jay. They got open water lakes in Oklahoma, just like they do in West Texas. They got live Sonar fishermen. The best one out there is from Oklahoma.
And he's spent a lot of time here now.
And he's in Texas.
Yep.
They got open water lakes in California, Arizona, New Mexico. I mean, lots of these climates are similar to West Texas and have the same type of bodies of water with Florida strain largemouth in them. Even in California, some trout fed largemouth at times. But in Texas, at this point, we're kicking out more of these type of fish than anywhere else.
Yep.
And the one difference, you can like it, you can love it. I know some people don't like the ShareLunker program, and I understand their point of view. I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. The one difference in Texas is the ShareLunker program. That's the difference.
Yeah, and that, I mean, genetics really do matter without a question. And
no doubt.
All this was put together with a really good principle in mind because genetics matter. The research
in
is there to show
every species in nature.
Yeah, look how much money
Humans
spent on
included.
white-tailed deer and their genetics and selling. I mean, it's crazy, and that money isn't spent on those private deer just for the heck of it. It's because it works.
It doesn't matter what it is. If you breed an Angus cow with an Angus bull, you're going to get an Angus calf. And if you breed an Angus cow with a Brahma bull, you're going to get a Brangus calf. Like, the genetics make a difference. If you breed mostly Florida strain genetic fish that have the capability to grow to 15 pounds with the males that are Florida strain,
Yep, and large males at that.
you're going to get a better chance at growing a bigger bass.
Bingo. And that's, again, I think we've discussed this before, and I tell folks this a lot, just stocking in general. We don't stock, our largemouth bass aren't being stocked to change the population, to increase population numbers, because people always say, we're not catching anything, y'all need to stock some more. That's not
what we're doing.
That's not what we're doing. We're stocking these fish simply to try and increase the number of trophies. And it literally is, we're stocking this individual fish. Hopefully it survives. It has a better chance to get large and someday it gets caught.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sheerly based on just trying to stock to produce more trophies in our lakes.
Absolutely, man. And that's the goal. And I think ShareLunker makes all the difference. When you look at how many generations of these genetics we've got in our lakes and the difference that we're starting to see now that we are into those third, fourth generations of those fish, it's unbelievable what's going on in Texas. So for those of you out there that are asking me, why are we seeing so many big bass in Texas? The number one reason to me is you guys at Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the ShareLunker program. It's why I always say, and I don't always agree with everything. We've had discussions on things I don't agree about. Some of the grass maintenance, we've talked about that, and I don't like some of it, and that's okay.
Yep.
That's okay. What I always come back to, though, is we're so lucky in the state of Texas that we have the best fisheries management department on earth. There's nowhere else that does the job that these guys do. The ShareLunker program doesn't exist anywhere else. There's other things somewhat similar, but nothing like this, and nothing with the dollars behind it that you guys have invested in it, and the sponsors over the years. The Toyotas of the world. I think Budweiser used to be a part of it. I mean, it's been tremendous to see the support that the people of the state, the business of the state, have given this program. We're all reaping the benefits of it now, because the reality is we go out here to Lake Fork these days and we catch any lake around here, guys, and we catch a 4-pounder and we're like,
Whatever. Yeah.
we don't even take pictures of them, really.
No.
I mean, some people do, but not all the time. I mean,
Not at all.
I've gotten to a point where I don't really take pictures of 4-pounders unless the customer wants a picture.
No, 8-pounders are kind of, to me, a cutoff, truthfully. 8-pounders start getting, not dare I say not special, but an 8-pounder is a big fish.
The fact that you just said an 8-pounder ain't special.
Yeah, it's...
Like,
we
realize what we're talking about here,
I'm
folks?
telling you, I've got to fish several days over the last week with my dad being in town, and I've said it in the boat several times, just exactly that. It's like, I don't really get excited about catching 6s even. I mean, it's fun, I love it, but
We are so spoiled here.
very much so.
We are so daggone spoiled here. To speak, and I know the ShareLunker department isn't your department. Kyle deals with that more, some other guys up there. But one thing that I was really excited about that Kyle told me about last year, and I want to restate that. now we're getting to a point where you guys have brood stock from ShareLunker
Let's hope you're
offspring,
gonna bring this up.
and you guys are breeding males that are ShareLunker direct descendants, correct?
Correct. At this point, this will be our first year stocking this year. Every fingerling that gets stocked in the entire state is going to be a ShareLunker fingerling.
It's going to be a male that was a ShareLunker offspring with a current female ShareLunker.
Exactly.
Right.
So historically, we'd stock out millions and millions of fish. They were Florida largemouth bass. They have good genetics in their own right.
Yeah.
But these, and we'd stock out the handful of ShareLunker fingerlings we got, be it 5,000, 10,000, 30,000, whatever it was, 50, 60,000. So this year, the millions and millions of fingerlings that we stock are all going to be pure ShareLunkers. So they're going to have pretty much the best genetics, best growth potential.
Yeah.
And with how the program's going, we've got a brood stock built up so we can have that in the hatchery. That's essentially going to be going forward every year, year in, year out. They'll all be ShareLunker fingerlings.
And what they've got going on down there, folks, is they've got these fish in a raceway when they're getting ready to spawn them. They put them in individual tanks, and we've shown y'all some of that in the past. And they pair up a specific male with a ShareLunker female to try and spawn that female out. And then when they're not in those raceways and all that, they've actually got a pond that they keep some of these
Yep, they hold them over.
ShareLunker offspring in these ponds out there. And I'm amazed that I haven't gone to jail yet because I done jumped that fence 3 times at night. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
I want to jump that fence at night. I'm telling you, because y'all got some ponds out there, and I'm like, I was talking to Kyle. We're standing up at that hill looking at them ponds. I was like, dude, what if I just throw a yellow magic out there right now? He goes, oh, you catch an 8-pounder. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Oh, it's nuts.
There's some craziness in some of those tanks up on that hill now.
No, it is, and I always joke when eventually we retire those and they get stocked back in the lake somewhere. And I always say I need to be in a boat when those fish get stocked, because if they get stocked back in the lake, they're pretty hatchery dumb at that point too. So
oh yeah,
you've got 8+ pounders that are just
they ain't never seen a
first
little
thing they see.
They're eating anything that comes in that tank. Yeah, and now their new tank is out here. They're eating anything that comes by. So definitely.